Thank y'all all for being here. You know, the charter members were selected based on your colleagues. It was a bunch of your colleagues that said, these are the people that judge all around the state and we look up to and we think are amazing choir directors and give great feedback. And this is who we want to start the choir side of, you know, our LMAA organization. And so this is our first steps. We did the same thing with band. We brought in someone who was doing it really well in Texas and said, show us how you do it. And we started with a Zoom meeting, and then we took that and then brought it to the state of Louisiana. So we're really, really excited to have Cheryl here today to show us, you know, how they've been doing the trainings over there in Texas and to get all of her knowledge and get started. So thank you for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
All right. Well, here is just a brief bio that I would like to read. Cheryl Wilson-Janasak has spent 37 years teaching elementary, middle school, and high school. She spent her last 24 years teaching at Garland High School and retired after 18 years as the director of choirs there. During her tenure, the a cappella choir and a cappella women were invited to perform at TMEA. She's performed numerous times with her middle schools. On our side of it, she is affiliated with TMEA, TCDA, ACDA, and TMAA. Whereas she's finished her last part, she was the secretary, and let me try this again. She has served the Texas Choral Director Association as secretary and middle school vice president, and she recently ended her tenure as the Texas Music Adjudicators Association vocal vice president, which she shares since I am the Louisiana vice president. It was so wonderful to agree to do this, and she was recommended highly by Lynn Gackle and a number of people that I reached out to. So we're in for a joy, and I will now shut up and take my face off the screen and turn it over to Cheryl Wilson-Janasak. Yay!
Well, that was very nice. I'm hoping that's not so much of a joy, that joy part. I hope I can maybe give a little bit of that, or maybe some clarity somewhere. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. In the 4 years, the tenure for the Texas vocal person is 4 years, and doing the workshops was my favorite part. The meetings sometimes not so much, even though I like the people. The workshops were the fun part for me. Like Greg said, I taught for 37 years and retired back in 2018. And I had just started my tenure the year that I retired, because I hadn't planned on retiring that year. But anyway, they let me stay on and help out. It looks like we have a good group here. And what I just want to know for my information, because I see your names, is what level you teach at and how many years you've been teaching, because apparently you are recommended by your colleagues. So that's a big deal. So Daryl, what about you?
Well, I taught at McNeese State University for 22 years, and I retired this past year.
Oh, congratulations. Okay, Sharon?
I taught 39 years in middle school.
Wow.
And I'm retired. I've been retired 6 years. So
You need a crown.
I like it. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good age.
It's
a good age. How about the other Sharon?
I am also retired. I retired 5.5 years ago. I taught the last 10 years junior high, and
Okay.
But I've taught all ages.
Okay, awesome. Barbara?
I spent 35 years in the classroom, most of it which was in elementary music, and the last 10 years I did talented was my first retirement, because let me tell you, that's a lot easier than teaching elementary school. And then I retired about 4 years ago, and I have all of those years done the Livingston Parish Children's Choirs.
Oh, awesome. My first 3 years of teaching were elementary. And then I had about, 10 in middle school, and then the rest are in high school. So I know what you mean about the elementary, all those classes. Okay, Michael?
Had in year 25, which is hard to believe, and I'm still trying to figure out why my colleagues picked me to come do all of this, but that's okay. Anyway, I spent the first 5 doing middle school in Houma, then 18 as the choir director at Yesterhand, and in the last 2 years, doing talented music in St. Charles Parish and with 2nd through 12th years.
Okay, awesome. Good. Bert?
Hi, I spent 32 years at Northwestern State University as the director of choral activities there. And I also taught in Missouri at a college there for about 6 years. And before that, I taught high school in Michigan for about 3 years before I went back to work on my doctorate.
Awesome. Awesome. Mr. Galliano?
Hi, I'm a high school choir director at an all-boys school and an all-girls school in Baton Rouge. And I'm currently in my 36th year of teaching, and I love it.
Yeah, it's the best. I think it is.
May I ask if I'm on there? Can anybody hear me?
We can.
Deborah, we hear you. We don't see you though.
Well, that's probably a good thing on a Saturday morning.
Well, Deborah, tell us how long you've been teaching and what level.
Well, I was after my master's degree, 18 years full-time church in Tallahassee, and then went back for my doctorate, Florida State, and I've been in at the University of Louisiana Monroe. That's the only academic teaching I've done, and I'm finishing 19 years. I know every one of these people that have just introduced themselves. So I'm the director of choral activities at ULM.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Bert, have we heard from you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Amy.
This is my 21st year, and I have taught middle school and high school.
Awesome. Good deal.
Can somebody tell me how I can get on here? I'm in my car. So is there a button I'm not pushing on my phone?
There might be a drop down if you want to see a video.
I don't see it, so I better leave it alone. I can hear y'all and see all of you.
Debbie, in the block that has your name,
there's no block that has my name, sweetheart.
Well, that would be why you can't find it.
There's a little body without a face up in the right-hand corner. And I click on it and it does nothing, but it probably looks better than I do on a Saturday morning. So y'all just go with that.
Thank you, Deborah. Okay, Michelle, are you there? Oh, there you are. Hello? Okay, well, we'll move on. Linda, are you there?
Yes.
And Linda, how long have you taught and what level?
I taught 35 years. I'm presently retired. I do church choir at East Ridge Baptist Church. I taught elementary, middle school, and high school levels.
Good for you. Okay, Mark?
Good morning. I taught for 34 years and retired in 2020, junior high and high school at the same time, and also church music for 25 years.
Okay. Don't you love how there's so many church jobs? The choral people always have the church jobs too. I love it.
Well, it's because we don't get paid enough as
Right.
I got that one. Okay, Linda, did we do you?
Yes.
Yes.
I can't keep track because they're moving around my screen. Who did we hear from?
Lisa?
Me, Lisa Johnson.
Lisa Johnson. Yes, please.
I've taught 18 years. 12 of those was at Good Hope Middle School, and then 6 has been at different high schools in Arkansas, Bossier City, and now back in West Monroe.
Yeah, very good. And Katie, are you just our facilitator today?
I'm the president of LMAA. I teach middle school band. So,
middle school band.
Yeah.
Bless your heart.
thank you.
Well, it's so nice to meet. Did I cover everybody?
It
so
looks
nice.
like we have Michelle Delat. Did you have it's chatted something?
Oh yeah, she was at a solo and ensemble or something. I saw that come through. Anyway, so glad to meet you all. My gosh, the number of years here is incredible. And so, and I think that you all are the charter members, am I correct?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so you're like the ones that are going to start the whole process off. So I think that's absolutely great. If you have a question at any time, I think there's a little raise your hand feature in there, and I'll try and catch that. Or if there's a question in the chat, Greg, if you kind of monitor that for me and let me know what comes up there. I'm going to share my screen and I hope it works. So here we go. Just a sec. Let me get this over here. I'm on presenter mode. There we go. And I can still see people, which is even more wonderful. I can't promise you that this is going to be without some glitches here and there. During my 4 years on the TMAA board and doing these workshops, went through the COVID years. So the Zoom was quite popular back then, and we all kind of learned how to do that, but I don't promise that some of them won't, there won't be a glitch somewhere. So anyway, as I said, thank you so much for having me here. And so let's go ahead and get started. There's a lot of facets to judging, and it's the evaluating and the assessing also, but there's also other things to that too that we have always stressed to other people who are in the workshop. And so we're going to start with the purpose here and why we're here. And it's to organize and administer adjudication training for music educators and for the purpose of consistency, education, and pedagogy. With all of the experience that's sitting right here on this Zoom, some of the pedagogy and education part of it is already ingrained in us so well, but it's those younger teachers too that you want to bring up through the organization and train so that there will be more people that are able to go out and judge. You know, there is I'm retired, so I know that in I don't know how many years, this is something I probably won't be doing anymore, even though I love to do it and I love to go judge. It's something that we just need to keep getting new people in, and people that are qualified, of course. A purpose also is to provide a common meeting forum and clearinghouse for an exchange of ideas and methods that will stimulate professional growth and advance the standard of musical and educational achievements for music directors in the state. And that's the whole thing, is to strengthen the standards of the music and the education and the achievements of that. And I think by having a standard and having a rubric that you use to judge with, it keeps us on track as far as what we're listening to and what needs to be worked on. Also, to cooperate with existing associations whose purpose is the betterment of music education, not only statewide, but with other states also, and things that they do, and sharing information that way. Because I think it's real important that you glean from other places also, because I don't think any one place has the best ideas for everything. I think that you steal a lot of ideas, and I don't know about you, but when I teach and I still go out in clinic and stuff, I'm stealing other people's ideas. And I think this is something that we can give our judges, also people that we're training too, the ideas that they need. And plus, from other organizations, you can just learn a lot. The LMAA membership requirements, I'm not going over all the membership requirements, but I like them. What I like about yours that we don't have in Texas is that you have to reapply for active membership to prove that you continue to satisfy the qualifications. And I really like that component of that. And so basically, this is all those 4 things that they need to know, that people need to know to maintain that membership. Also, it's very important to make sure too that you pay fees and all, and pay things on time and be responsible. I'm going to admit to it. About 2005, we had a different executive director who handled all that, and he wasn't very, she was not very, she didn't demand things be there by by the deadline. And so, you know, you could always say, oh, I forgot, can I da da da? And she'd say, fine, just send it in. Well, then we got a new executive director, and everybody who didn't pay by the deadline, they were thrown off and had to reapply. And that included me, and included, oh, I'd say probably about 35 other people that didn't do it also. So it's real important that you keep that, and that you keep that standard, that you expect your judges to pay for things, to be on time, meet those deadlines, and have consequences when they don't meet the deadlines. An ethics policy, we just adopted one in TMAA probably, I would say, 3 years ago. We didn't have one. We took it, we combined ours from the Texas Education Agency and the UIL that governs all of our contests in Texas. And I think it's a really good thing to have, because sometimes you have to go back to that ethics policy and use that as a way to maybe remove somebody. And it's not always pleasant to do. We have removed people, and it's not the most pleasant thing to do, but it's important because it keeps the integrity of the organization. And that's what you want, is you want that integrity. And you all are the charter members, and people chose you. So there must be something about you that they trust, they like, they respect, you know, whether it's your teaching, whether it's your person. And well, the teaching's a big part, but the person also, because right here it says adjudicators shall maintain an ethical code of conduct which will not impair or prejudice effectiveness as a judge before, during, and immediately following the competing dates. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Honoring all contracts, assignments, and duties as prescribed by the contest chair. Prompt notification of the contest chair regarding emergency situations is required. I'm probably speaking a little bit to the choir right here because of all the experience that you all have. But this isn't something that necessarily is in the forefront of younger directors' minds when they judge or when they get on the judging panel. So it's something that they need to know about. And it's so important to immediately contact them if there's any kind of a problem. Adjudicators shall not discuss other adjudicators with directors or school officials. The criticism of other adjudicators will be handled by the grievance policy. And I think it just lends integrity to the organization that you don't go around talking about what somebody else did. Also, you have to avoid any kind of conflict of interest between the adjudication of the contest and any organization participating in that event. Can anybody tell me something that would be a conflict of interest? Can anybody?
I can speak to that. Conflicts of interest would particularly be like we've had already a few situations where we kind of had to intervene, where a judge that was going to be judging in one district was working with the bands in that district coming right up to the contest time. So you want to make sure if you're going to be judging in that area that you're giving, you know, some time to where you're not working with those groups right before they perform.
Well, and I'm a consultant in a school district up here, and I won't ever take a judging gig from that district or that region because I don't want to give up the consulting stuff I do. So I can't do both. You know, that's a huge conflict of interest and would be a problem. And it says this next bullet point says it may not evaluate a music organization event if that judge has served as a clinician conductor for any of that school organization in that region or area during the current school year. But that doesn't apply to if you're going to conduct an all state and all district and an honor group from some region or whatever, that doesn't apply there. And if you've taught in a former region or area or zone, you cannot, if you leave that area or zone, you can't go back and judge there unless 4 years have passed. So that it's almost like especially if it's a high school, all those kids have cycled out of there. And you can't be invited for a return engagement. If you're judging the concert portion, it has to be 2 years of elapsed since you go back and judge that. Can you go back and judge sight reading? That's different because it's a separate event. So you could do that. And a district may not employ a judge nor a judge accept an adjudication assignment if there's a known conflict of interest. And it's keeping it all above board. It's keeping it honest. It's keeping it transparent, so you know what's going on. So there's nothing that anybody can accuse anybody of doing or trying to do something under the table or something that is just not on the up and up. I just think as judges, it's so important that we are perceived as being above all of that and making sure that that kind of thing doesn't happen. So you've been asked to judge. So now what happens? You have several responsibilities. And again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir a little, but it's you need to make sure that you arrive on time. You bring useful items with you. I am a real pencil person and not a mechanical pencil or write with a pen. So I always bring my own pencils that I like, that I know erase, and I also bring my own pencil sharpener because I like them sharp like swords. And so I just know that that's me, so I bring that. Making sure that you have the correct form and music for the choir that's going to perform. And if it's not correct, that you bring it to somebody's attention before they start singing. And check the information on the comment form. Is it the choir that's up there, or is it something different? Formulate your comments. This is something that was, I think it started in Texas maybe about 10 years ago, and it took me the longest time to use the comment sheet this way and formulate your comments specific on the back, overall on the front. And I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. And then finish writing as the choir is leaving the stage, and afterwards using the rubric and assessment form as a guide. That has been one of the biggest things that is happened in judging, is that rubric. And sometimes it's hard to be true to the rubric because you see that person on stage and you're like, I don't know, I don't want to give that person that. Okay. But we'll talk more about the rubric because I am just a fan of the rubric and will support those types of things anytime. Also, if you know you're going to judge, and it's cold, usually in auditoriums, layer so you can take stuff off. Okay. And there's always that choir, so you may need Advil. You may want something there. And what to expect as a sight reading judge. We are not going to, you might need more Advil, maybe extra strength. We're not going to spend a lot of time on sight reading. We're basically spending most of our time on evaluating choirs, but you need to make sure you familiarize yourself with all the octavos and the requirements for all the ensembles. Bring useful items, timing, keep sight reading running as close as on time as possible, and make sure you're handing out the correct music. And those sight reading procedures are explained on the LMAA website. And so it's real important that you know those. Also, when you're a sight reading or a concert judge, a lot of times, in my experience, when I go into judge, they'll have a rubric on the table for me that I can refer to. If they don't have a rubric there, it's just me, but I always bring one just in case. Somebody recommended one time having several rubrics so you can circle stuff as the choir sings and what you hear, because sometimes you can't write as fast. And I don't think do you all have any type of computerized assessment form, or is it handwritten?
Most districts are handwritten still.
Yeah, well, the majority of our regions are. Some of them are. I think it's one of those things that it takes a while to implement, but some of the regions have that. So anyway, knowing and being able to mark on a rubric things as a choir sings is very helpful. Judging reminders. Be kind to the student and parent workers. I know people who have just been ugly. It's just not necessary. Be kind to them, treat them well. They're there to help. So it's one of those things that you don't want to be that person. Dress professionally but comfortably. I have a lot of thoughts on dressing professionally for a judging gig. I like to look nice. I like it more business casual. but I've seen people who wear jeans, and it's not that I'm opposed to jeans. It's just that it's how you dress them. And I guess I'm old school. I like to look professional. I like the men in coats, at least sport coat, at least, just looking nice, but making sure it's comfortable, that you're comfortable. When you're in that auditorium and you're listening to those choirs, you are the authority there. And so if there's audience behavior has to be addressed, it's up to you. And mainly this goes toward other choirs that are sitting in that auditorium listening. And so, and sometimes they don't have adults with them, which I don't understand, because I wouldn't trust kids in an auditorium without one of us giving the evil eye. But making sure that it's a good audience for every choir and not just one choir. Do not discuss contest results or performances. I know that when you go to dinner afterwards, that you're going to discuss those things. And I really don't see anything wrong with that. I see what this referring to is you're sitting there talking about it at the contest in front of directors, in front of people running the contest. Who knows who may overhear what you say? It's just not good. So I would leave that till you're away from the contest site. And because we've taken out our programs where we've written ratings and looked at them and compared. And I really just don't see anything wrong with that. I just think that it's not the place to do it at the contest. Your friends want honest ratings. I think most people want honest ratings. I would hope they do. I'll have to tell you, there's one time I took my second mixed choir to UIL, and we have to do one a cappella piece in our program. And the piece I picked for my second mixed choir, it had a key change in the middle. It was supposed to be a key change, and then comes back to the original key. And when we got to that key change, the altos went off somewhere. I don't know. And I really don't know how they all got back on when it came back to the original key. And then afterwards, we were standing in the hallway waiting to go to sight reading. And one of the students asked me, they said, do you think that, that what happened in the middle of that piece, do you think it's enough to get us a 2? And I said, yeah, I think it's enough to get you a 2. I don't know what happened. They said, well, we don't know what happened either. I said, well, that's okay. Those kind of things happen. So I go to get the ratings, and it's a 2, 2, 1. And I'm like, 1? Who would give that quote? I mean, I wouldn't have given them a 1, because being honest, it was not a 1. But it was from one of my dear friends. And I asked her afterwards, I said, Debbie, I said, why did you give them a 1? I said, you know what happened in the middle of that piece? And she goes, well, you're my friend, and I just couldn't give you a 2. And I'm like, you can give me a 2 and it'll be okay. Because I know this. I mean, I have ears. I know what happens there. But it's real important that you keep the integrity of the judging, and not just because it's your friends. So you think, well, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. There is room for benefit of the doubt, but not when it goes south like it did. Plan expenses in advance and communicate with your contact person. Make sure you keep in contact with them and know exactly what's going to happen and what you'll be responsible for and where you're going to stay and all those wonderful detail things. Don't consult with anyone before placing a final rating on the adjudication sheet. This is your rating and what you think they should get, not what you think, well, so-and-so is going to give them this because they've kind of been low all day, so I'm going to give. No, you stay true to your judging and to your rating. You will make mistakes. I make mistakes. Everybody makes a mistake. You will make a mistake. But the thing to do is to get right back on track. You don't go and apologize to a choir. Oh, and to their director, I made a mistake with your rate. No, I think that'll cause even more problems. Just acknowledge, like, I missed that one. And I have been on the bottom of like a 1, 2, 3. I've been on the bottom there. It's not the place to be. I didn't like being on the bottom there. But you go back and you keep watching the rubric and you get back on track. Okay. And it's your rating. It's not anybody else's. And also refrain. And I think this next one that you all have, is, I guess this is in reference to college directors refraining from engaging in the recruiting of students for any college purpose. Okay. And so somebody must have experience with that somewhere. I don't know. Maybe you can let us know why that's on here. I'm not sure, but that's the only thing I can think when you notice some choir has some really great kids in it. Adjudicators who do not approve of particular selections performed are reminded that the musical components listed on the adjudication form and rubric will be the only criteria used for adjudicating. An adjudicator's taste is not to affect the rating. I have a lot to say about this. As the adjudicator, you are judging the performance only. You are not judging what the director is wearing. I have big ideas about that, but I'm not going to say anything, you know? And when somebody comes in pink cowboy boots, I just have to let it go. But you are there to judge the performance, not make assumptions about the group because their hymns may be not hymned all the way. Some are wearing their black shoes, some are wearing tennis shoes. You are there to judge the singing, period. And that's it. We had a grievance lodged from a choir director at a contest because she felt that the judge gave her a 2 because he didn't like one of her pieces. And he even put on the judging sheet that it wasn't appropriate for UIL, even though the Texas All-State Treble Choir sang it back in February at the convention. It was still his opinion that it didn't belong at the contest. And I think that's wrong. And, you know, music changes over the years. And what people, a lot of times our singing now is not what people used to sing 15 years ago. And I actually miss, you know, the Brahms and I'll get it every now and then and that type of thing. And, but that's not my decision. That's not what I judge. I judge what they bring to the contest and how they perform that, whether it's my taste or not.
Well, Cheryl, we have
yes.
a question from someone that said, Barbara's asking, does that include pop music and et cetera?
Well, I think I know your requirements are different this year from previous years because of you're still in COVID, whatever. But, and do you have one that's from any source? I have that around here, that you can pick one from any source.
I believe that's the case, yes. As long as it's on the list. Most of the high schools have one from the UIO, but we kind of.
Yeah, that's not really done here. And I think it's because of the years and years of it happening here as far as UIL, and it's not been what people do. I know that some people have done a Broadway piece, but it doesn't happen very frequently. And if that's something, you know, and it says here in what you all have here, that you can't judge what kind of music it is, because that's the taste isn't to affect the rating. In my own opinion, I don't think that the assessment is where you judge a piece of pop music, but it's not for me to say according to this. Now, if you wanted that to be different, then that would have to change, and how you would word that. But, and I don't know, is pop music done often?
Well, usually it's done when with younger people bringing something like I've judged before when a ladies ensemble came in with Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy. I mean, it's a great piece, but you know, then you're kind of sitting there going, is this a proper venue for that particular piece to be done? And to answer Steve's question that just popped up, if it appears on a list, Steve, you'll be okay with the All-State Honor Choir thing being accounted for one of your things. If it appears on that, we will certainly accept it. I'm sorry, go back to Cheryl.
No, I just didn't know how often that happened. Now, with this Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, was that like a solo and ensemble type thing?
Large ensemble festival.
Oh, okay. To be honest with you, I've just never heard anything pop at a UI at our UIL contests. You know, I just haven't heard that, and I don't know if that's something that you have to gradually put into requirements, maybe, as far as where the music comes from, as far as the source of that. I'm not sure. That would be something that you all would have to come to an agreement about. But I can understand why you would think that pop music maybe not belonged in this contest, in the assessment, because I don't know, the assessment to me is like just an outgrowth of what you've done all year. And
if everyone would check that, if you have an opportunity to check the chat, Michelle has been, since she's at a solo festival, she included the vocal performance requirements. If you have a question, you can look at those. You put that in the chat for everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay. Very good. I think I have those somewhere here. Grievance. But does it conflict with what is right here about what you can sing, even if the adjudicator doesn't agree with it?
Well, I think in the LMAA rules that we have here, we still have to abide by the LMAA rubric and their stuff.
Okay.
And Barbara's made a comment. So if wherever you are the judge, we should trust the organizers to make sure that the song fits the competition's requirements. And usually that's the case, Barbara, but if you have a district director that is a band person,
yeah,
sometimes they just let them fly through. You know, the choir director should know what they're doing, and they take it for granted that everyone should do it. The district director should check, make sure that everybody's following, but they get tied up with other things. Sharon McNamara Horn has her hand raised.
Okay, Sharon.
One of the things that I think is going to start happening more and more, I think so many of the programs, at least in our area, are struggling with just trying to recruit students because of things that are going on at the parish level now. And I judged a solo and ensemble festival recently and was surprised at some of the selections that were chosen for that.
Scoot over.
What I noticed was that there were more things that were in what I would traditionally call a pop venue or pop genre, but the words, the texts were good texts, and they had a moral or a, something like that to it. So that was good. And I think that something that we're going to start seeing more and more, I might be wrong, but I think something we're going to see more and more at the large ensemble level is we have one required piece, and then we have that the other piece can be chosen from any source. So if we don't carefully define that any source, then any source means any source technically. But I do think that it at least needs to be quality music. I do think that there's some things that I would traditionally call pop music and would never have done at a large ensemble festival, but they have some value perhaps. So to me, it's a gray area is the bottom line of what I'm trying to say.
Well, and you're talking about the parishes having problems in their choirs, I'm sure with numbers also, that maybe it has a good message and all, even though it's more of the pop, maybe just to hook them in, and to keep them in, and I understand that. But I think that when you get on, I think, to an assessment level, that you may want to look at some type of a qualification for some of the music, if that's the direction you want to go and kind of go away from any popish type stuff.
And
Yes.
I guess I'm saying that may not be clear when we say from any source, I think we're going to deal with it more and more. I'm not advocating for anything. Like I said, I would never have done it, but I think we'll see it more and more.
Well, and I think that's something that you all probably need to address, you know, in your state, as far as if you want to make that a little more narrow as far as where to get music from. So I can see that. Okay. Adjudicators must remain very professional in giving comments both on recordings and adjudication sheets. Do you all do recordings
Yes.
Yes.
in all
Yes.
your contests?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
In fact-
I've only done those at festivals and not at, you know, our evaluations. And so I was surprised to see that. And I did notice that they had suggestions as far as giving comments on those and making remarks and things like that. It's, you know, again, it needs to be constructive criticism, and it needs to be delivered in a non-hostile style, I guess. So let me ask you a question. So you have your comment sheet. So you do the comment sheet and you do the recording.
Yes.
Okay. Is that a lot to do?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It just seems like it to me. That's all. But I mean, and sometimes, I mean, it's really good for the kids to hear the judge actually talking.
Cheryl,
Yes.
usually what happens is when you're judging, they will give you either a handheld microphone or one of those little mini recorders. It is the part you say you introduce yourself and start doing all the things. Now, what's happened is usually that means there's less writing and more. There's a lot more. Please see tape.
Yes.
Listen to your tape. There's
Okay.
not much written thing.
Okay.
I'm a
That
writer.
makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Can I remind people to mute their microphones because there's noise coming through? Okay.
Katie, can you mute Debbie Chandler?
I'm not in charge of the meeting. I think Cheryl can mute her though.
Who is
Cheryl.
it?
Deborah Chandler.
Debbie Chandler.
Oh, okay. Let me do it. Oh, I couldn't do it. I don't know why. Okay. Another thing that we've run into with judges is cell phones. And it's just so important that you're not on your cell phone while a choir is singing, you know, and just to even give the illusion that you're always watching to see what comes up on your cell phone. We had a grievance filed against a young judge she was judging middle school, and there was a person sitting behind her in the chair, in the seats behind her, and she was on Facebook while the choir was singing, you know, and it's just, I mean, how can you even listen to a choir singing when you're busy scrolling on Facebook? And this person was a member of TMAA and filed the grievance against her. And so I'm just saying that, you know, cell phones bring I love my cell phone, but I love it when it's put away also. So especially with judging, that needs to be not anywhere seen. Descriptive words, when you are talking on your microphone or you are writing things, and there's all these different words that you can use, and words that are not as abrasive as some you may use. This is a challenging piece that you selected instead of, I don't know why you picked this piece, it's too hard for you, you know, and couching your words so that it doesn't sound like you're attacking them. Okay. And I have a sheet, I forget where it is, it's somewhere, and it has my, you know, different words on there. So I'm not always using the same words all the time. And because I always have a habit of using the same ones, because I like, careful, watch out for the da-da-da. And I mean, and so, you know, if you can have different words, descriptive words that can teach, but are not attacking the choir. Social media, it's real important as a judge that you don't go posting things on social media such as heard the choirs today in region so-and-so, they aren't what they used to be. You know, why would you even think about doing that? And why would, I mean, I can see posting, you know, really enjoying my time in region so-and-so or wherever. And thank you so much for having me. I can see that. But putting anything that could be perceived as negative toward anybody is just a huge no-no. And I think it goes to the integrity of that person. So you have to be real careful of social media, in my opinion. Choral performance requirements. It's here's the website. Of course, it's on the LMAA website right there. We were talking about that and making sure you know the current requirements. Are they going to stay the same for next year that they have in place this year? Do you know, Greg? Or Katie?
I believe that they're going to stay the way they are.
They're going to stay the way they are? Okay. Because ours have kind of gone back a little bit to the pre-COVID, not all the way, but kind of trying to make our way back without shocking people, because COVID was huge in the effect it had on our choirs and our kids. And so just making sure, pardon me?
I said we had COVID, plus we also had hurricanes and pestilence. And we had it all.
I mean,
ice storms.
You know, and because we had an ice storm here, kids were out of school 2 weeks ago for 4 days.
Yeah.
And then they went to contests this past week. And you know, when you judge, there is a little bit of grace here and there that you have, And I think especially there was grace during COVID, but I think there are places to have grace also besides just COVID. Judging forms. We have the assessment form, the concert performance rubric, and then we're going to be listening and evaluating choirs. Okay. So the first thing we're going to is talking about the rubric. The rubric is the key to a uniform, consistently applied standard of adjudication. I think some of our people have a hard time with this, because you look at what the rubric says and you listen to a choir and it's like, there would be a whole lot more in the sometimes category than there is in the mostly category, if you were really honest about it. But it's something that can keep us consistent. And the terminology there that you can use also when you're talking, recording comments or writing comments, using the back of the sheet to keep your rating on track. This is where you can be specific on positives and negatives, giving constructive criticism and suggestion. You can also do that easily, I think, on a microphone. And I think you can get it out there faster than you can if you wrote it. If you're using that sheet, this is what people had a hard time with in Texas, because we don't use recorders, we just write. And so on the back of the sheet, we wrote specifics. We write specifics about the 3 pieces they sing, because they do 3. And then you turn it over. And then in general, we have 3 categories: tone, technique, and musicality. And you write in generalities about their performances in those areas. And then there's comments after that. And this is the way that TMAA wants us to use all of our sheets, whether it's band, choir, or orchestra. And I've had people who've been teaching for years tell me in a workshop, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm doing it the way I've always done it. Number 1, write comments. Number 2, write comments. Number 3, write comments. And that's not the way that TMAA wants it. TMAA wants it, but can't make people do something that they don't want to do. And I think by really having the rubric and ideas of how you want it all done, and when you start new judges in, that they're following that also. And so you have them starting at the beginning, doing it the way you want it done, which I think is really good, because sometimes it's hard to change people and the way they've done things. Change is hard for a lot of people in different areas. Using the front of the assessment sheet to give general comments about the 5 sections of assessment pertaining to what you heard. And then make sure your comments on the back of the sheet support the rating you give, and making sure that the comments you record support the rating. Because if you go on and on about how good it is and then you give them a 2, they're going to wonder why we get that. You know, you have to back that up. you know, gone are the days when you teach and kids ask you why you did that and you go, because I said so. That doesn't fly anymore. You have to have a reason. And especially when you're in a contest like this and an assessment like this. And I don't know, do the assessments in Louisiana have any effect on their teacher ratings or anything like that? Or is it something separate?
There are a few schools where the assistant principal will write in that their rating will have something to do with their SLT, but we've tried to get principals to understand that that probably doesn't need to be in their SLT.
Right.
So most often it's just them going to the assessment. So it doesn't affect them personally.
Right, right.
In
Okay.
our area, the teachers can just choose, like I choose to use it as part of my SLT.
Oh, okay. Okay. Very good. Now getting down here to the categories of how you would rank a choir singing. The A, the consistently, with no or very few exceptions, typically, usually. Consistently does not mean perfect. It does not mean everything is in place. There will never be anybody that sings something that everything is in place. And so there can be minor flaws, and we'll look when we look at the rubric, we'll show you that, but it's not perfect, but very few exceptions. Mostly, generally, more often than not, it's there. Sometimes, occasionally, periodically, at times, could be intermittent. Rarely, seldom happens, infrequently, hardly ever. And then never, at no time, not ever, not once. When I was on the TMAA board, we had a discussion about doing away with that 5th category, the never one. Usually, if there's a choir that is going to get the never, that is not the kid's fault. That's the director's fault. That is not the kid's fault. And I've given a 4 before, and it was deserved, but I've never given a 5 unless well, I'm going to take that back. During sight reading, I did one time because the choir laughed, the director laughed, closed the piece of music and said, we can't do this. And they left the room. I was like, okay. And that's the only time I can remember ever giving a 5. And so that may be something that we drop just because it's just so final and it's like nothing is happening. That's just something to think about. I don't know if and when that'll happen, but it has been discussed to do that. Okay, moving on. Your assessment stage performance sheet. I think it's always interesting to look at the classification, make sure you have the right choirs, and then your 5 categories here. Okay, now I need to ask you a question about this. The little box that's over here on the right is, do you rate that over there? A, B, C, D, E, F? Okay, and then you go from there. Okay, very good. So this is what you can write just basic stuff about the performance, overall musicianship, balance, technique, intonation, and tone, the important things. Now, here's what I noticed on your rubric. This had E, poor, never. Is that supposed to be F? This E that's over here?
I don't know if we actually were assigning grades other than they were probably just trying to go alphabetical.
Oh, okay. Good deal. So that's good. That's good. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take each of these categories right here: tone, intonation, technique, balance, and musicianship. And we're going to go category by category and listen to choirs. So when we listen to choirs for tone, that's all I want you to listen for is tone. I don't want you to listen and say, oh my gosh, it's the most unmusical choir I've ever heard. Doesn't matter. Technique, they have wrong notes all over the place. What does the tone sound like? And let's talk about their tone. Okay. So let me get to that. Okay. So we have 3. Well, let's look at this first. Consistently, tone is consistently characteristic and performers match within their section. So I'm assuming that this means when it match within their section, meaning that their section produces a good unison. And so if you have a 2-part piece of music, you have 2 good unison lines that match up, that makes a clean performance, that you don't have voices that are not right with, not on pitch or right with the pitch, or not in unison with that. And so you're listening to see if it's a clean sound, and a centered focused tone is consistently evident as there's control in all ranges and volumes. Whether they get louder or softer, a lot of times the tone does change. It starts to spread if they're not supporting that. And so we're looking for that centered focused tone when they sing also. Now, here's something that I think is really important. Consistently characteristic, and performers match within their sections. Consistently characteristic. It needs to be characteristic of the grade level you're judging. If you have not taught middle school or spent time down there, you may not know exactly what that middle school tone is like. You can't even expect the 8th graders to sound like the 7th graders or the 9th graders, or 9th graders in a high school to sound like the 8th graders. The tone is different. And so you need to have an idea of what that tone sounds like. And if you haven't spent time in a middle school, and you haven't gone, if you teach high school and you don't work with that age, know that it is not going to be your top choir high school sound, even top middle school choir sound. It could, you know that it's going to be probably a little breathy, that the centered focused tone, it may be there, it may not be there. I mean, there's some fabulous middle schools out there, but then there's some that also need help. The excellent, the mostly, and most performers match within their sections. I have a typo there, I apologize. A centered to focused tone is mostly evident. However, there are occasional harsh or pinch tones due to the inability to control in extreme ranges and volumes. If you've taught middle school, consistency is not their strong point. One day it could be good, the next day you go in, it's not. Anyway, this is the harsh or pinch tones. It may occasionally be there. Usually that happens when the trebles are going up into the higher register, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's super bad. Okay, it's just occasionally that it happens. And then of course, when it goes down to average, there are more harsh and pinch tones due to the inability to control it. And then it says performers do not match within their section, that there's not good unisons and the sound is muddy. Rarely on fair, weak tonal center, performers do not match within their section. And again, frequently harsh pitches, tones in all ranges and volumes. And then of course, it's never characteristic and poor due to incorrect breast support and underdeveloped embouchures. This was on the choral one. Are you referring to a vowel shape, or is this a band thing that's in here?
I think it probably was a copy and paste.
Oh, okay. So
I was about to say exactly the same thing that this looked like. This looks like the wording was just copy pasted from band.
Well, I'm originally a flute player, so I saw embouchure and I went, oh, but there are embouchures for choirs for certain things, for certain vowels, for me anyway. A centered focused tone is never evident. There's harsh pinch tones. Basically the tone is bad. So what we're going to do is I'm leaving this up here because I want you to figure out, and you're going to tell us where you think these examples go. And I have different levels, different voicings. So we're just going to start with, this is, and I think, let me make sure my sound share is on. It is. Okay, so you should be able to hear this. Please let me know if the majority of you cannot. Okay, it should come through your computer. This is a middle school mixed choir. Okay, and I believe it's the top mixed in the class, in the school, and they're singing Shenandoah. Here we go. So you look around the rubric and you tell me where you think they fit. If I can get my cursor there, there you go. This may take a little bit to get in there. Sorry.
Cheryl,
Yes,
we can't hear anything.
you don't hear anything?
Not at
No.
all.
Oh,
We
that's
thought
not
you
good.
were, we thought you were working on it. We were,
Oh, no, 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 I was playing it. Just a second. Oh, it became undone. See if this helps. Can you hear it?
yes.
Good. Oh, sorry. I was trying to turn it up. Ugh. Sorry for the snafu.
All right, disappeared again.
I've got it.
Okay. Comments? What do you think about that? What you heard?
Mostly it was good. It was hard to tell, just like Steve Galliano just said in the chat, the recording may have influenced some of it. It was kind of going in and out. But overall, I mean, what I could tell, trying to weed out the electronics, it was fairly decent. I'd give a tone of 1.
Okay. Anybody else, Sharon?
It was good. Especially the beginning with the girls was really, the tone was great. When the gentleman joined in, there were some characteristics, and I taught junior high, so I was just actually very happy with their tone, because you never know from one day to the other what they're going to sing. And overall, that was good. Yeah, and like you said, we're listening to a recording. I have a feeling live that was a really good performance.
Okay. Anybody else have a comment? No other comments?
I just wanted to comment that first off, I'm glad I don't judge choir, because I would have no idea where to start with that as a band person, but beautiful. But I know for our band people, it's always hard for them to separate tone from pitch, or pitch from, when to listen to each category specifically. So it's always to challenge ourselves to just take out that tone and only talk about that in this particular category.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think sometimes, there's so much when you listen to a piece of music, that goes into that, but just trying to identify what is a good tone and what is not a good tone. I think with this one, it sounds almost to me that that maybe the girls were taught separately from the guys, and that it almost, to me, tone-wise, it almost doesn't sound like the same person taught them. Because I think.
So how do you judge that? What, you just judge them separately? How would, the girls get a superior, boys got an excellent. So how do you do that?
Well, the thing that you have to think the overall here, and it says tone is mostly characteristic. Centered focus tone is mostly evident. However, there are occasional harsh or pinch tones due to inability to control in the extreme ranges and volumes. And that would, I think, would refer to the boys when they came in and saying that. I mean, I understand middle school boys, but I think that there's some of that that could have been better vowels and all to make that tone a little bit rounder and warmer and all. And I think though that, from this, and you have the girls are good, but the girls are very nice actually, and the guys are not quite where the girls are, that would probably fall into the excellent category.
Yes.
Because the guys don't have that, aren't consistently, the tone isn't consistently evident in control in the ranges and the volumes. So I'm thinking it would fit into the excellent category there. But I agree that the girls, I mean, beautiful. And the guys, it's just different with guys than it is with girls, in teaching them and all. And I think that though that's what would have influenced them to get an excellent instead of a superior rating on that one. Okay, and you can agree or disagree with me. That's okay too. Question, Sharon?
Not me. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. Need to lower it. It's okay.
Okay. Okay.
Sharon
Any more questions on that? Okay.
Sharon McNair-Horn, did you have your hand raised?
No, it was me.
I did have it raised and I forgot to come off of mute. I would probably have done the same thing and would have probably dinged them a little bit. I've had junior high boys that were in that situation, and they sounded to me like sometimes I've had them struggle with range and be very resistant in wanting to even go into their normal range. They want to either be more of a man or keep that little boy sound, one or the other extreme. So to try to get them on the right page was often challenging for me. And so I probably would have had an issue with that, just because they need to hear from somebody else, not just their teacher, that you're not really quite blending with the girls and your tone is not, it's not matching.
Right. And and a lot of that too is dependent upon music selection, and where that lies in the voice for the guys. And then sometimes you just never know because it can change. And so, but that one right there, I would think an excellent would probably be where that would probably fall. I don't think it would fall into the 3, because I don't think it's frequent. I think it's there, but I don't think that that's where that falls. And I think the excellent would be a good rating for them. Okay, let's move on. This is a high school treble, first treble. It will start. Okay. Comments?
That's good.
Yeah. When you hear something like that, you know that's really nice. The tone, the unisons are so beautiful, and it's hard to sing in unison and make it beautiful. I think unison singing is hard, and I just thought they did a good job. The last one we're going to listen to is a high school mixed choir, and they're singing Witness. No, they're not. Okay, that's not Witness.
No.
Sorry about that. I don't, that isn't the Witness I've sung before. Anyway, we're going to move on then because I don't know where Witness went. I'll have to redo that one. Okay, any questions about, oh, that's intonation. Here's tone. Did I switch?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Who will be a witness for my Lord? 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 Who is a witness for my Lord? There was a man of the Pharisees, whose name was Nicodemus, and he did believe, saying, Christ, my life, what is the reason of human sight? Nicodemus was a man who desired to know how a man could be born when he is old. When Christ told Nicodemus as a friend, then you must be born again, he said, Mother, must be wise, repent, believe, and be baptized. You will be a witness for my Lord. You will be a witness for my Lord. You will be a witness for my Lord.
Okay, comments?
A lot of stuff going on.
A lot of stuff going on. What about their tone? What do you think?
It's a spiritual.
Yes, it is. Do you think that there is room for changing that tone according to the piece there is? It is.
It happens.
It happens.
It happens because you don't want a spiritual to be pretty.
No, and sometimes it's a brighter tone. Sometimes I don't think you can. I think you can still expect, focus and unity of tone and unity of notes and all. But I think that there are pieces that lend themselves to a brighter sound. And I think that a spiritual could be one of them, not all of them, but it could be one of them there. Anybody else?
The consistency, the characteristic that we're referring to here, is it the characteristic of tone for the age, or is it characteristic of the tone for the piece and the style of the piece? Because I don't feel like the tone is characteristic of the style of the piece, but it's a pretty impressive tone in its own right for people who are in high school.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I think it applies to both. I think high school, I think that you can have a characteristic tone or characteristic tone of the piece in high school. Whoops. Gosh, sorry about that. I hit it.
We have a lot, Cheryl, in the comment section. We've got a lot of folks saying that it was a good choir, that it was pushed in spots, but overall it's pretty good. They thought it was a characteristic of a spiritual sound. And of course, in Louisiana, we have a number of choirs that do a number of spirituals. It's one of our characteristic things that we use.
Sure.
And so I think we judge spirituals in a little different way than some of the other states may.
Okay. And tell me about that. What about judging the spirituals? The tone, the brightness, the style.
Yeah.
Well, to me, that's dark. I mean, it's a dark, somewhat covered sound in its own right. And it's a rich tone, but it may not be the more relaxed approach to singing that would come out of, let's say, out of a gospel choir or out of a choir that sings a lot of spirituals.
Right.
So, I mean, that's where I say that I don't think the tone is necessarily characteristic of the music.
Okay. Okay. That's a good comment. Thank you for that. I think that, you know, I don't think it's a bad recording. You know, I think it's, I think they do a lot of it good, and characteristically, as far as tone goes, I don't know. I hear some spirituals brighter. I hear some that are more of lamenting, and different ways that you can do that. But anybody else have any comments on that one? There aren't wrong comments. Sharon.
I have a question. Would you reference the stylistic element in tone here under tone, or would you reference it under musicality or in interpretation or in some other category?
Probably musicality is where I'd reference the style of it, the sound, maybe in tone, but you could also combine those two and mention it down in musicality as far as alluding to the style of the piece.
Because I know one affects the other,
yes.
But you know, that's one of those hard questions for me. It's like they really have a wonderful tone. I don't think it's always appropriate for certain types of spirituals, but do I really ding them because of the tone, or would I just put a comment that, you know, you could have done something different under interpretation?
Yeah.
You know, where do you put it, I guess?
Interpretation wise or tone wise, I would put that probably down in the musicality section as far as that goes. And with just a mention to that, you know, that it could be different. Yes, Michael?
Yeah, so I know earlier we talked about personal style and personal choice. So for me personally, I would like a little bit warmer, a little bit richer, a little bit darker tone. Maybe it was because I was trained under Dr. Allen and he was kind of saying the same thing. So I guess that's why you have 3 judges on the stage and not just one. I thought overall it was pretty good. It did get a little pushed. It did get a little harsh for my ear.
Right.
So, you know, I think I would be in that 2 range. I mean, I could see it could be a 1. I would be leaning more toward the B, just because in their upper ranges, it really, and when they got to the fortes, it got a little pushed, a little strident for my ear.
Well, and you know, everybody, when they listen to choirs, I mean, I have something, the first thing that my ear always hears is the tone, you know, and I can see how you said that about as far as, you know, it going toward the 2 because of some of the push in there. I think it's one of those places you could go back and forth between those 2, and you could probably, you know, you could probably make a case for either of them. But I agree with you. I kind of like my tone just a little bit taller and a little more round and warm than that.
Well, and I think, like I tell my students, there's a difference between opinion and critique. So I think as long as you back up whatever rating you put with
Right.
a solid critique that backs up what your rating is, I think we'd be okay.
Yeah, I think you are too. I think it's real important that you have definite reasons that you gave them that rating. I think that's important. Okay, let's move on to intonation.
Hang on one second. I don't know
yeah.
how to make the little hand to raise my hand, so I'm raising my.
Okay, I
not
see,
my
Barbara.
virtual hand. I have a thing about, I really believe that choirs need to change their tone based on the selection of music. For instance, well, like what we're talking about. So I'm wondering, I doubt seriously, if you have 3 songs, you're going to start your song with your concert portion with the spiritual. So what you're going to be doing is you're also going to be comparing what the tone was in the other songs to see how they are changing the tone to match the song. So if the tone sounds the same for the Schubert as it does for the Witness, then we've got a problem. But if you can see that they are trying to adjust the tone, trying at their age group, because it could be elementary, middle school, high school, if they're trying to change the tone to match what they're doing, then you're trying to decide if they were successful at doing that and not just this is tone in an isolated box. That's just my.
Yeah, it's a good comment. Good comment there. And I wonder too, I mean, are there many high schools that change tones on pieces? If they know how, if they know what to do. I mean, because I wouldn't expect somebody to come in and sing Brahms like they'd sing a spiritual, if they even sing Brahms, because I have it in my ear what I like my Brahms to sound like, so, and hopefully.
I think it's part of what we should be teaching, which means I think it's part of what we should be judging.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think so. And because it is different and it is a different style. I agree with you. I agree. And I think that's something that's going to come into play more and more through the years because of all the multicultural and different ethnic pieces that are being sung that are different from, our Western style. Okay, intonation. Let's move on. This is a middle school second treble. Okay, here we go. Intonation consistently demonstrates an awareness of tuning within and between sections, minor flaws, but adjustments are made quickly. And excellent adjustments are made as performance have an understanding of pitch tendencies, awareness of tuning, but there are numerous minor flaws. Then we go to numerous flaws and flaws that are uncorrected and lack of correct breath support. And the lack of breath support also shows up in the average rating also. And then, of course, there's the poor over there. So here, let's listen to this one. Middle school, second treble, non nobis domine. Okay. Comments on intonation?
Pretty good. Mostly there.
Okay. Okay, Greg.
It's a second treble in a middle school.
I'm
And so
impressed.
that they kept going.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Any other comments on that? What could have made that a cleaner performance?
The altos. Altos a little strident in some parts.
A little pushed,
Uh-huh.
and it hurts their tone.
Mhm.
And then therefore it hurts the blend, you know, kind of,
Right.
it's all kind of connected there.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is. Anything else about that, an intonation? Okay.
I have a question. Took me a minute to unmute, sorry. So in that case, in this song that we just heard, you would do is you would put your stronger comments in the tone and the lesser comment, lesser in the intonation. So maybe a intonation, but a B in the tone, and that would kind of even out what we're all talking about.
Right. I kind of see intonation and tone as kind of being hand in hand, and part of that being the vowels and the shape of the vowels and the support. And I just think that keeping those nice again, the sections, keeping those sections nice unisons throughout. And I think that this has tone has a lot to do with that intonation there.
Yes, and what I'm saying is in this assessment evaluation that we are trying to learn, what we are being asked to do is to separate in our assessment tone from intonation, and to pick and choose your battles and where you're going to address something more strongly and where you're going to be more aggressive in your thing. So in this one, my opinion is that the tone was reflecting intonation, but where my comments should be, the negative comments should be more in the tone and less in the intonation. Is that what we're saying?
Right. Yes. And the reason I've broken it down like this is so that we can be listening, aware of, instead of listening to for everything in one sitting, which we're going to do here in a minute, is just listening to these different things so you can kind of hear and know what to listen for there as far as intonation goes. But a lot of that, any type of problems has to do with the tone and the support of the tone. I mean, I'm with you on that one. I'm just looking at intonation right here because that's how it's broken down in your rubric. And so you're going to have to give some kind of a B, C, D, E to that on your assessment sheet. You're going to have to give one of those, even though you could go back to the tone. And if you could fix those things in the tone, but any minor flaws might be fixed because of the tone. But you're going to have to, on the assessment sheet, put one of those down. And so that's where you have to decide what that be. And minor flaws, and good understanding of pitch tendencies, then you could put an A for that one, but unfortunately, I mean, I think that from what I get from the assessment sheet is they want a letter on each of those. Is that right, Greg?
Yes, there's a rating for each one of those sections.
Right. And so you're going to have to address that intonation. And if it didn't bother you and you didn't, I mean, if it didn't sticking out like, oh my gosh, this is just, something is just really off here, then you can put, the A or the B wherever you think that goes there. But the thing is, you're going to have to fill that out, but I would definitely address, even in the intonation section, you can address tone in there as to helping the intonation, or try and maybe marry and put comments for both of those and then give them their letter. Yes, Greg.
I think that all of our charter members are struggling with the idea that we're listening to one individual song where we know there will be 3 in an assessment. And we usually listen to all of them, and we're judging intonation. We're looking at the consistency of intonation across all 3 pieces rather than looking at an individual piece.
Right.
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 I can address that too, because I know when we first started doing this on the band side, you know, the members had the same questions, but you have to think of it like a sliding scale. When you hear that first song, tone might be at an A. When you hear that second song, it might slide back down to a C, and then then the last song might bring it back up to that B. So, it is important that we're especially when we're training the younger members, that we're getting them to think of each of these categories individually, and how would that slide throughout the full performance of the piece.
And it definitely would if you have the three pieces, because the front, in my estimation, the front of that assessment sheet is the general overall, and then that's what you're giving the grade on, even though one may be wonderful and the other one is like, the other couple may be iffy, so you have to, and that's something that you have to be able to justify, whether recorded or on the back. But having each of these separate ones, and I know it's 3, but I think to get younger teachers to listen for these things, I think that's our goal there, so that they can listen and they can identify and kind of put them into a track there. Let's move on, and we're going to hear this is a high school mixed, Damon. Okay. Questions, comments? What did you think of the overall intonation?
Sometimes.
Where did the intonation, where did you hear something where it may have suffered?
When they get loud.
In intervals that are big skips.
Mm-hmm. And then that's something that you can mention too. Where I notice it is like when the sopranos have to go up to that pitch, it's like they're just hanging a little bit on the underside of that pitch there, and like you said, Bert, it's those big skips there that they'll give anybody problems doing that.
There was a disconnect between the sections as well. Like it sounded like some almost atonal at times, where they were singing 2 different pieces in 2 different keys. Not quite that bad, but It was interesting.
Have any of y'all ever done Damon?
Yes.
It's interesting. It is. Yeah, I think it's for of course, a more advanced choir, but I think you have to be so careful in the tuning of this. I think that's what makes it a little bit dangerous there. And I do agree with you, Michael, about there being, it sounds like there's kind of a disconnect in there with that piece. Yeah. But I think that intonation is something you could definitely mention when you make comments. If you had a piece like this, that you could make the comments.
Can I ask too? So one of the things that we like to challenge our judges to think about is not only what comments would you give, but what would be the feedback that you'd give to the choir in that moment to make them better? Can somebody model what that might look like? What you might say? What feedback would you give the director to go back and make that sound a little better?
Just as a rehearsal technique, slow it down and listen.
Yeah.
But take your time so that you understand what those intervals really are, and gradually pick that tempo back up.
Yeah, I think that can be a mistake that many make. is just trying to go too fast, too soon. And also the breath support it requires. And working, and just working those intervals, whether you're working them in a warm up or whether you're working them, taking them out of that piece of music and working them otherwise, so that when you put them back in the music, it's not as big of a problem, or a problem that would hopefully help that. I'm not sure. I know that in Texas, we you can suggest ways to fix things, but like when we're in sight reading, we're just supposed to be judging the performance and not telling them what they need to improve on in sight reading. And that's a whole nother something also, as far as you're just judging the performance and not, they said, if you want suggestions about what to do, then that's what pre-UIL for, pre-assessment would be for. I think you can work, I think it needs to be worked into the critique, a suggestion of how you could probably fix whatever the main problem is, or that you see one of the problems that could be fixed easily, and say something about that.
Yeah, we're really big on wanting our judges to not only give critiques, but, even if it's at the end of the tape, taking a minute or two to really say,
Yes.
These are some things you can go back to your classroom and do to help some of those things be heard.
And see, the thing about it is, when you record like that, it's easier to do that. And it's easier,
Yes.
To explain something, and it doesn't take as much time as it does to write it out. So
Exactly.
that's such a plus there, that you could actually make those comments on how they could improve it. And I think that's important, because I think you go to the assessment, I want to know what I need to know, and I want to know what I need to do to fix it, So anyway, we're going to move on from intonation. We're going to move to technique. This is huge. Basically, it's rhythms. And it says adhere to key signatures. I'm thinking that's correct. Notes, rhythms, no lapses, attention to correct interpretation and clarity of articulation, which I think diction would probably cover that. It says at the bottom, consistently display an awareness of clarity of consonants, purity of vowels, and naturalness in diction. Entrances and releases, just the technical parts of this. And again, you have the consistently, mostly, sometimes, rarely, and never. And I don't know if anybody has ever, has put a never or a pour on a sheet before, if you've known of that happening anywhere. But let's listen to one of these. This is a high school top group, Ryu Chiu. Okay. Comments?
Thank you for. Let's see what the chat is saying.
We got a bunch of bless their hearts.
That's a nice way to put it, Greg.
Don't put that on a sheet that you write or on the recording. Bless your heart. So what in here is not demonstrated in their singing?
A lot.
A lot.
A
Very
lot
good,
of
Sharon.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
Well-
the rhythmic patterns,
Articulation,
articulation, yeah.
enunciation. Um, those are the two biggest things for me. It's kind of a mess. And
Yeah.
therefore, because it's not crisp and clean and rhythmic as it should be, it's missing all those elements that go into making it up, so that enunciation, rhythm, articulation, the way they shape the notes, the way they shape their vowels on occasion, it's it's very inconsistent.
Even
So
clapping
where
was
would,
muddy.
go ahead, I'm sorry, Greg.
I said even the clapping was muddy.
Yeah.
It's a little rushed.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and just taking this, and I know it's not three pieces and it's just this one, where would you put that on technique?
It's maybe a C.
Let's have to.
Sometimes uniform interpretation of rhythmic patterns. Sometimes they adhere to key signatures.
Mhm.
Attention to correct interpretation is inconsistent.
It is inconsistent.
Is inconsistent. What about entrance and releases?
A little sloppy.
Little sloppy?
Yeah.
Okay. The diction is sometimes problematic. Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so do most people think it'd be the C, the good?
Yes.
My heart would give a C. My brain would probably give a D.
Well,
Yeah.
see, and this is where judging comes in. It sometimes gets a little difficult, because that a lot of their problems are because of their directors, and not because of the kids.
Yeah.
But then if you were, like you said, your brain comes into it and you look at it, it could be down at a fair instead of a good.
Yeah.
And I see good sometimes as a average, and thinking, is that an average choir or is that a below average choir? And that's something you have to come up with. You have to know in your head where you're going to put that and where that's going to be and what ranking that is. Okay. Let's move on with another one. This is high school second girls. And I didn't write down what they're singing, so I'm not quite sure what we're going to hear. Here we go. Oops, nope, don't want that. Okay. Comments?
Okay.
That was good.
Come on, man.
Were they together? Write notes? An awareness of what they're singing? Consonants, vowels? Yes? Not bad.
Had a couple of cutoffs that weren't quite together, but overall it was really pretty good.
Yeah.
Right.
And and again, the superior is not without little flaws. So that would be something that would, I think, is a nice, perform or starting of a performance for that, with the entrances and the releases and the notes and rhythms. And I really think that notes and rhythms are just your basic that you need to have, right off the bat. Okay, let's go to musicianship. And this, wrong one. What did I leave out? Technique. What's next? Balance. Balance. Okay.
Cheryl,
Yes.
before you go on to that, can you go back to that screen one more time? One thing that we teach on the band side to kind of keep track of this category, since it's so huge, is on the back of the sheet to circle underneath each column where they are, because maybe rhythmic interpretation is an A, but then key signatures and write notes is like a D, and so you end up with like circles underneath all the different categories, and that can kind of give you a visual so that you can average your letters and figure out what you're going to give for that overall category. Since it is such a huge category that covers so many different things, we really recommend people circle on the back of the rubric to help keep that category in check.
So is the rubric on the assessment sheet?
It's on the back.
It is.
Yes.
Because that didn't, okay, didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so then the director, if they get a C in technique, they can kind of turn it over. And so this is what we've been trying to get people to do. So not everybody's doing it yet, but then they can turn that sheet over and then see where their circles kind of line up. So they can say, okay, they can visually see in technique, maybe my entrances and releases were the D. That's where it was, but everything else was pretty good. So that's why I got a B there.
Oh, that's great, because then that makes sense, having the recording, that you're not having to write all that. You can just circle, because I think it's important to have that rubric there. I think that's a great thing. I didn't know you all did that. That's good. I like it. Okay. Balance. Okay, here we go. Achieve proper balance and blend within and across sections with only minor lapses that are quickly corrected. Consistently showing awareness of melody. And then of course, this should say mostly right here where it says consistently. Mostly achieve proper balance. Sometimes, rarely, and never. Okay, let's listen to this is a high school singer. Balance. Was the melody always predominant when they're singing? Did the other sections have an awareness of where the melody was?
Now, there were some really good voices in there, but that's the problem. It wasn't a choir, it was just a bunch of voices.
Right, because there's so much with just that recording that you could go on to intonation, tone. I mean, everything kind of affects everything else. So yeah, and I wonder if they had that wherewithal of to know when they're the important part and when they're not, and it's hard sometimes even here when there's the blend is not there and there's so many individual voices. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Any other comments about the balance? No? Okay.
No, we have a problem that the piano was, even the piano wasn't balanced.
Yeah, and there's sometimes like that. They don't test where the piano is, and it just kind of covers up, especially when you get to middle schools, you know, you have to ride that soft pedal so much just so to stay up underneath them. In the interest of time, we're going to move to musicality. And I think this is a really important one. Again, talking about phrase shaping, interpretation, style, tempos, anything that has dynamic contrast, especially listening for those things, because those are the things that make a piece of music, the notes and rhythms on the page really pop out and become music. And so let's see if they understand what that is. Here we go. Here's a middle school treble. Okay, what do y'all think of their line and their singing?
I liked it. Awesome. That's some good stuff there.
Connection in the phrase. I like that. Any other comments about their musicality?
I didn't think there was very much vocal line in the dynamics, but the phrasing, it was just kind of blah.
They could have had more dynamics in there.
Within the phrase. Within
the phrase.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're going to the word stress, with the word stress and moving there, yes, it could have been shaped a little bit better.
Yes.
I didn't think it was notey, but it didn't have a lot of shape to that. Anything else? Okay.
So are we saying that's a B, or are we saying that's a what?
If I were to go by this rubric, it would be in the B category because it doesn't have much dynamic contrast, interpretation style. I mean, it has line and all, but it doesn't go much of anywhere. And you could probably go in between there on both of those, but I would go toward the dynamic. Even the dynamic contrast, it says on the excellent is mostly obvious and effective. And then the good says sometimes obvious and effective. Where would you go with that? I wouldn't go to the good with that. I think that the line's good. They could use, I would certainly mention they need more dynamic contrast in there, moving to the stressed notes, a Gloria Deo, that type of thing. And being a little bit more musical with the line. I don't know if you were following the rubric with just this one piece, whether it would be superior. You'd have to listen to those other pieces and see if they, had more in them. Now, when they started going to that B section in that piece that I just played, it did, the dynamic dropped, and it was a little bit of a different switch in style. It was more legato than it was da 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 bum bum, than it was moving, and so that could be something that would be toward the superior category.
Yes.
That makes sense?
Yes.
You have a question?
Yeah, so now without having the music, it's kind of hard. So, but if they are consistently following the dynamics that are marked, like if that's all they're doing is following the dynamics that are marked on the page, would we indicate that under technique or under musicianship? Now, I agree that, their phrases were kind of flat, but they did obviously have some dynamic changes, which were probably written in the piece. So
I would address that under musicianship. Sometimes there are pieces that don't have dynamics written in them, and there's not very many. And that's where I would expect the director to follow the phrase, follow the line, follow the word stress, and especially if there's something that's repeated, and to change it in some way so that it's not all the same. Even though dynamics aren't written throughout, I think that there will always be those rises and falls and those differences. I mean, just because the dynamics aren't written doesn't mean that you don't find something in there to make it musical.
Right.
In my estimation, you know, that you have to sometimes, as the director, be the one that goes in and figures out what you're going to do dynamically, especially when nothing's written in it.
Exactly.
And that'd be something to suggest to people who may not feel comfortable doing that. Because sometimes, you know, they want to follow just what's in that music. And I get that, but I think you can do even more that's in that. And you can suggest that to them. You know, it doesn't have to necessarily ding them, but you can always suggest that to them also. Okay, the last thing I want to play you is a piece of music, and it is a second, get out of this. It is a second men's in a high school, and we're going to listen to the whole thing, and think tone, intonation, technique, balance, musicianship. Being the experienced people that you are, kind of think where you think that they fall down or whether they excel. Okay, here we go. And I hope I can get all this in here. Come on. Oh, it takes a little bit. It's a Danny boy. I hope. Has a little bit of a lead. You may have to turn up your computer.
Can't hear it. From what you heard, what do you think? Overall impression. Pardon me? What did you think of the line? What about the musicality?
We thought it needed xylophone.
Yes.
Okay.
More cowbell.
Oh, there you go. More cowbell.
Right.
But
I just wrote
intonation.
down a
for
few
me,
notes. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Barbara.
I was just saying intonation. I had, this is the place where if I'm sitting in there listening, I have to monitor my face, because when those high notes come out and then the high notes are flat, and I'm like going, I have to make sure that my facial expressions do not reflect my ears. But I think they sound good, and it sounds like they are working toward the vocal line and the musicianship. There's some technique issues with breath support, and I think, and I would guess that a lot of the guys are lifting that chin because the higher the chin, the closer to God, and somehow or another, they think that's going to right all the wrongs. You know, so there are some things that you can say about technique, but I think the overall thing that brings their rating down is going to be intonation, and all of the other things that you say are the things to help them understand that the technique is creating problems with tone and intonation and balance and musicianship.
Good comment. Good comment. I will tell you that along with their other two pieces, the ratings they received were a 2-2-1, which I think is a good rating. You know, and so it evened out to a 2, you know, and so and I think it's probably their tone, the intonation with that, and the vocal production that got them in trouble there. And like you said, lifting your chin to make it higher. Yeah. Any other comments on that one?
Yeah, I just, I wrote down a few things, you know, just need a little bit more warmth in the tone. Just like Barbara was saying, you know, the upper register, especially a little flat because of the technique. There's not enough air support. Balance generally okay. Needs to have a little bit more line. It's just, it's a classic good 2. There's just so many things that could be right that, you know, they're not a terrible group. They're a good group, but those things that aren't right really poke out because of the other things that they are doing well.
And Michael, I'm glad you said that. When I judge, I'm always listening for those things that catch my ear. You know, it's like, what is that just happened there? You know, and so, like you said, it pokes out. Yeah, and right there. I mean, I think it is a good 2. And that's what I would have given them also, is a 2, because they did have line, they did have the balance, and there are areas where most of the tone was good, but that intonation, that can do it for you right there. So good comment. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think there's a programming issue too, because I think that especially being that it's a second group, and I don't know, you know, sometimes I'll put a comment in that tries to be benign in an other category that's not getting rated, that addresses that. But I don't think it was an appropriate piece, maybe, for that group.
And then there is some place in your rubric that talks about the appropriateness of a piece of music. And so that might be someplace where you can put, you know, this is a challenging piece for this group, you know, and so you can go there, but you can mention that, because a lot of times, I mean, people will just pick things that are way too hard. And maybe that something that's more into their range. Anybody else on that?
We do have something in the comment, the chat where, and I think this is something that we all need to kind of discuss briefly. We have as directors striven is a word, strove. I like strove. Anyway, we have based our entire career on trying to get a superior rating. And I think what this is doing is forcing us to realize that a 2 is more likely where it lands, and superiors are reserved for superior, and a 2 is not the end of the world. But that's going to force us to rethink the way we've been judging, and it's also going to make sure that we are more consistent in our judging, I think.
Well, and that's our hope with our rubric here, because if you really followed it, there'd be a lot more 2s and there'd be more 3s also. But it's something that people are going to have to really, you know, grasp, because like you said, you know, everybody wants the 1, but that's not, every choir isn't there for that, isn't capable of that. And 2 is excellent, you know, and you've got to, and I know everyone wants the 1, but I mean, excellent is not bad. And directors are going to have to, you know, let their kids know that that's excellent. That's a good thing. That's not bad. You know, there's just areas that you need to improve on.
Right.
But one of the things that we have to understand, like what we're saying, is if we are really only going to give superiors and excellence, it's really just pass fail. And that's not what we're doing here.
Right.
We have to be able to up and down the chart in order to have true picture of what's going on.
And you have to be honest about it, about, where it fits into the rubric. Because I just know that there'd be a whole lot more threes and, at least where I've judged, if the rubric was strictly followed. And all the directors have this rubric, they have access to the rubric. So I just think just stressing this and adhering to the rubric, that's where all of our attention goes. And I just think that it keeps us consistent and keeps us honest about our judging. And let's see, let me get this down here. And of course, you all know how all this works as far as ratings and what they come out to. And that can also be found on the website. I believe it's on the LMAA website. And then that's the end. And if you have any additional questions or anything, you're more than welcome to email me. If you want any type of, I don't know, stuff that as far as what I presented, I think he's going to put that on YouTube, but I'll be glad to help and answer questions any way that you have. Is there anybody that has a question right now that they'd like to ask about any of this? Sharon?
I have one quick question. Is the rubric that you use in Texas substantially different from this one, or is it similar? I haven't seen that one.
We have only 3 categories: tone, technique, and musicality. Balance and all is in with tone. Intonation is in with tone. Technique is basically notes, rhythm, diction, releases, attacks, and musicality is all the musical stuff that goes with it. And appropriateness of pieces goes into musicality also. Yeah, so we only have 3 areas and we don't have a recorded, but I think in the future, and this has been talked about too, and maybe they got the idea from you guys, that eventually we're going to have the rubric on the back of our assessment sheet, so that they can circle things in the back. Because I kind of like that myself. I'm glad to know that you all have it. But I think I'm glad you have it because you also have the microphone that you can record. I think that's great too. But no, we only have 3 categories that we deal with there.
Hey, Cheryl, I think that all of us here would love to go work for you in Texas as a judge somewhere, just saying.
Well, you know that our judges, when we hire judges, 2 have to be on our approved list and 1's from anywhere. So
Barbara, you got a shot there.
Barbara, you do have a shot.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yay.
Yeah.
Let me tell
And
you
you know,
something.
I forgot to say, Cheryl, I did teach my first 7 years in Houston.
Did you? Where in Houston?
In Galena Park. And I'm so old, Cheryl, that my elementary choir was the first elementary single choir, not a community choir, but a elementary choir. Mine was the first elementary choir to sing at TMEA.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's a big deal.
I didn't know it was a big deal. I was very young.
Well, maybe that was good. That you did.
I think so.
It was a big deal. Well, my first years, I taught 5 years in Klein.
Oh, okay.
That's where I started. Yeah, and then moved up to the Dallas area. Yeah. So that's great.
Does anyone
No,
have,
I mean, pardon me?
I'm sorry. I was going to say, does anyone else have any questions of Cheryl? If not, I want to thank Katie, because Katie's been driving this train for a long period of time to get this into the vocal division. And I appreciate all the hard work that she's put into it. And I thank all of you charter members for agreeing to be a part of this group. In doing so, you've been selected by a lot of people for not only your integrity, but also because of your expertise. So I want to thank you for that. I also want to thank Cheryl for all of the putting this together. And she's assured me that she will share the PowerPoint with us. And we will be having more sessions in the future to bolster and add more people to our number.
And Greg, is this what you'll do in the future?
I'm going to assist Katie for at least one more year, and then I'm going to slide off the board and focus more on my church.
Got it. Got it. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for your time and your expertise, because all of you are seasoned choral directors, and I just wish you the best, and your state is lucky to have you.
Amen.
Thank you so much for coming and doing this for us. We're so
Not a-
excited to get this rolling in Louisiana.
Yeah. Go choir people.
Everybody have a great end of the year. Stay healthy. Keep focus on the students and your health. And God bless everyone.
Was
All
good
right.
seeing y'all.
Good
Bye.
seeing you. All right, take care.
You see, sitting there,